Eventually, though, the U.S. holding on for a 2-1 victory, advancing to their 13th Gold Cup final. As you can see, we're joined from St. Louis by Jose Del Valle as well as Herculez Gomez. But we'll start it here in studio. Casey, your first thoughts on the U.S. performance and the result?
I'm going to start with the positives.
Mm-hmm. That's a first.
Give me a reason to start with the positives.
They won.
They won. Great start. You really felt from the first 15, 20 minutes going 2-0 up that it was going to be comfortable, that it was just going to be one of those matches where Guatemala had a tough quarterfinal. They got through emotion. The U.S. had a tough quarterfinal, got through. But the U.S. were probably more disappointed with the way they got through on their quarterfinal and the elation of Guatemala to get through. And in the end, give Guatemala a ton of credit. I mean, they're the 106th ranked team in the world. And after that first 20 minutes, first 25 minutes, they were the better team. And so on that side of it, I'm probably the most disappointed because we see in pieces of matches what this U.S. team is capable of doing. And then we also see what they're incapable of doing, and that is sustaining the good parts for 90 minutes. And they completely let this Guatemala team, look at the shots. That tells you everything you need to know right there, is that that you go 2-0 up after the first 20 minutes, it looks incredibly comfortable, like you are going to roll over this Guatemala team.
Like the 16th team versus the 106th in the world, yeah.
100%. And in the end, the U.S. were hanging on for dear life at the end of the first half and hanging on for dear life at the end of this match to get a result.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the statistics, we just saw them there. But, guys, Guatemala had more shots, more possession, more passes, a better pass completion percentage. We never would have thought that heading into this game. You guys witnessed it live there in St. Louis. Jose and Herc, I wonder what you thought of what we just saw from the United States against Guatemala.
Hey, Sevi, I agree with Casey. Like the first 20 minutes, the U.S. was dominant. I thought it was going to be an easy game. But Guatemala was able to come back, and give credit to Luis Fernando Tena. The subs he made in the second half, Olger Escobar, Arquímedes Ordóñez, they gave Guatemala confidence. They gave Guatemala clarity in that final third. It was Olger Escobar who scored that goal. And the U.S. let Guatemala grow, let Guatemala gain confidence throughout the game. Game management, that was the main problem for the U.S. And I don't understand why Mauricio Pochettino didn't make any subs. It looked like the U.S. didn't have any fresh legs in the second half, and the subs came in like late. The U.S. got lucky, but I agree with Casey. At the end of the day, this sport is about winning, and the U.S. got the W, and they are in the final for the 13th time. 13th final for the U.S. No other national team has more finals in the Gold Cup than the U.S.
All right, let's start with the positives. I really like the start. Jose and I are sitting there, and as the day's going on, we're seeing Guatemala fans, Guatemala flags, and we're thinking, whoa, this is going to be a very pro-Guatemalan crowd. And we're sitting there trying to project what we think it could be. Maybe a 60-40, 65-35, and when we get there, it's 90-10. Very pro Guatemalan crowd. And you see the crowd and the players, and they're feeding off of the crowd. And you're thinking to yourself, the U.S. has to do something here. And then they do it. It's Diego Luna, quick goal. And then it's Diego Luna again, another goal. And they take control, and they take the sting out of the environment. They take the crowd out of the game, which is exactly what you need to do if you're the U.S. men's national team. And then they had to suffer. Now, oftentimes in these finals, in case you've been here before, you've got to show more character and personality and fight than you do actual good footballing play. I thought the U.S. men's national team learned how to suffer today. They allowed Guatemala to hang around. Yes, but a team like Guatemala, who's going to throw numbers forward, who's going to throw caution to the wind because they need to, is going to put you under pressure. With that very pro-Guatemalan crowd, it wasn't an easy environment for the U.S. men's national team. And I don't want to say they got away with it, but I think today was a good learning moment from them. I don't think it's a case of they survived. I think it's a case of they managed. Yes, more shots, but how many of those shots were really uncomfortable? How many of those moments were really uncomfortable for Matt Freese? Maybe one in the second half? And I think it's worth noting here, Guatemala's done amazing. Guatemala's on a trajectory where they should be on their way to their very first World Cup in their country's history. But if you look at who gave them their moment today, their goal, it was two U21 players that were raised in the United States. They came up through the program of the Montreal Impact. They came up through the program of FC Cincinnati. It goes to show you where Guatemala, is finding talent, where they're valuing their players from. And today, those players who probably weren't valued from the U.S. at certain levels hurt the U.S. And I think the U.S. being able to survive and kind of manage those kind of emotions today was valuable.
And you can also add Aaron Herrera, who is the best defender in the back four of Guatemala, also born in the U.S. Rubio Rubin, the striker, also a product of the U.S. academies and a product of MLS.
Yeah, Rubio Rubin actually had, 6-7 caps for the senior men's national team of the United States before making making the one-time switch to represent Guatemala. I do want to hear from Mauricio Pochettino. We've got some great sound from him that we're going to listen to in just a little bit. But before we hear that, I want to touch on something Jose said and get your thoughts on it, Casey. Talking about the substitutions with Pochettino. His first sub doesn't come till the 58th minute. It's bringing Brendan Aronson on. He doesn't go to the bench again until the 77th minute after that. This was a game that, we just saw the statistics. We heard you guys talk about hanging on in the first half. There were moments where you felt like the U.S. needed to change, maybe even at the half, maybe even at the 45-minute mark. Pochettino has not gone to his bench. Is that maybe, as we're going to analyze like the individual performances of players in a little bit, should we analyze the individual performance of the coach here and say maybe he left his team to suffer a little bit more than they should have?
Sometimes coaches do that to see what his players are made of. I don't think you do that in a semifinal. I think there was plenty of alarm bells going off from the 25th minute to the 45th minute to say something's not right here. And we can't allow Guatemala the opportunity to come back into this match. So I would have loved a situation where there was a message sent, and that message sent at halftime of, this isn't good enough. And I think you're allowed to do that more now. With the 5 substitutions, maybe with 3 back in the day, you couldn't do that as well as you can do it now. Now you can actually make a statement, leave substitutions for the later stages. I was today, and I have been in the tenure of Pochettino, kind of questioned
his use of the bench,
his use of and his recognition of situational problems and correcting them either through substitutions or through messages coming off of the sideline, because there was such a disjointed midfield. The back line was dropping so deep. I kept yelling, why are you allowing the 116th team in the world a free man to play out of the back? Why are you not stepping up and blocking those angles and forcing them to make good plays? But you weren't. One guy would press. There'd always be a free outlet out wide. The back line would drop off so far, there would be space in midfield. And it just was so disjointed. And I was just so surprised that substitutions didn't come on and the message at halftime didn't come on to correct that.
All right, let's hear from Mauricio Pochettino. Here's what he had to say after the United States beat Guatemala 2-1 to advance to the Gold Cup final.
I think the second half we handled very well. From the beginning of the second half, I had to adjust some tactical things on the halftime. I think the team was, control again the game. We didn't concede too many actions, clear chances of goal. I think all the big chances were for us. The problem is 2-0. Always is that feeling that always is you are in danger, no? And if you don't score the third, and that is the problem. I think we handled very well. I think that is amazing experience. I think this roster deserves massive credit to get to arrive to the final, and now we need to prepare for the next game. That is the final game, and now to see Honduras or Mexico two very good opponents for sure.
At 2-0, why do you think the team struggled so much to create more chances for a third goal that really would have?
Well, I think talking about creating chances, I think we created one or two more than Guatemala. The problem that you are affected for the noise of the atmosphere of the pitch is a problem. Every time that Guatemala took the ball was a lot of noise, and that provoked that is happening something important. But on the end, if you see the chances, our chances, we create more chances, big chances. That is a thing that sometimes is difficult to change that perception or that feeling, but the reality is completely different than the perception that we can get. And then today, I need to tell you that it was like to play in Guatemala, in Tegucigalpa, because unbelievable, the fans of Guatemala. I need to say, wow, unbelievable, because it was like not to play there in your country. And that was good for our player, because it was an atmosphere that we didn't expect and happened. And every time, I think the fans gave to you, to Guatemala, and an unbelievable energy. That is football. That is football. That is football. When we say the connection in between the fans and the team, that is the connection that we like to see in the World Cup. That connection that make you fly. I saw players of the Guatemala crying. I said, you are in the good way. I said, congratulations, because you are in the good way. That is the way that we need to feel. And our fans need to feel the same. It's not to come here to enjoy you of the spectacle. And if you lose, nothing happen. Yes, happen a lot. Things happen because you play for your pride. You play for many, many things that I think I cannot tell you tonight. But I think it's good for our player. Because when we talk about culture, that is culture. To see your team, how fight, how come here, and how the fans behave. That is an important thing that we need to learn here in this country. But I am nothing to tell, no, that we need to do this or that. Only that sometimes, no, we talk about culture, about this, about that, but I came from Argentina, and in Argentina, it's not the same win or lose. The consequences are massive.
That's what we need in this country, but I'm not here to tell anybody what we need in this country. Sounds like old boy's talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Well, but the other thing that I thought was impressive, that Guatemala would have that much support in Honduras.
Yeah, Tegucigalpa is not in Guatemala, is it? I don't know. Should we check that?
That would be impressive if they had that much support there.
Boys, you guys were in the stadium. Is he overstating kind of what you guys saw in St. Louis tonight? Did it have that much of an impact? And are there some shots fired, maybe worked in against the American fan base and what Pochettino's saying?
Stupid Americans. I'm so glad he's here to show everybody how it's supposed to be played and enjoyed and appreciated. Those are American citizens, the majority of those Guatemalans who were at that stadium. That's what Mauricio Pochettino fails to understand. Mauricio Pochettino is not here to give us a lesson on footballing culture and what the consequences are if things don't go well in Argentina. No, you're here to take this team to the next level. If you don't like what you see out of this team that you picked, where 15 out of the 26 players are from Major League Soccer, and where over 20 European players aren't here, that is on you. And if you are all of a sudden surprised that there is massive support for different countries within this country, I don't know what to tell you.
You should have done your homework, is what you should have done.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I, for one, and I know Casey feel the same way, and Jose, I, for one, have been very impressed with what I've seen from Guatemala off the field. On the field is very commendable. Luis Fernando Tena is going to have a massive say, and we're going to give him all his flowers on what he's been able to do and how he's been able to transform a program that was in the dumps, a program that was literally filled with corruption and was in a generational change, and where they are today, and possibly on the cusp of a World Cup, their first World Cup in their history. It's great. But their fan base and what they've been able to achieve and do in this Gold Cup, and how they've been able to show out, if it was a final between Mexico and Guatemala, I couldn't sit here in good faith and tell you that it would be majority Mexican fan base. That's how good the Guatemalan fan base has been. So tonight, if I told you it was 90% Guatemalan fan base, 10% U.S. men's national team, I think I'm being generous to the U.S. men's national team fan base.
Yeah, when we got to the game, I told her, can you please pinch me? Because I want to make sure I'm in St. Louis. I thought I was in Guatemala City because
Not
tonight, Guatemala was the home team. Yeah, tonight, Guatemala was the home team, and the fans were amazing. And I was telling her earlier in the day that the Mexican fans, they call themselves incondicionales, right?
Unconditionals, yeah.
Right? But I think that word is better applied for Guatemalan fans because to put it in the proper context, we're talking about fans that they never won anything. I mean, Guatemala never made it to a final in the Gold Cup. Guatemala never made it to a World Cup in the history. And soccer is the ¡1 sport in the country. So these fans, they're really loyal. They're noble. They spend hundreds of dollars. Remember that guy? He paid $2,200 for 7 tickets.
Yeah.
$2,200 for 7 tickets. And Mauricio Pochettino assessment is correct. I know the truth hurts. But Sevi, Casey, I made the same point the other day when we were in Austin. I was amazed that the U.S., such a big country, we're always talking that the sport is growing. There are so many good American players here in the U.S. and abroad. Christian Pulisic, for example, to me, it's a playmaker. It's a guy that I really, really want to watch. And people don't fill out like small stadiums. Like Mauricio Pochettino was saying, oh, I'm from Argentina. And I can understand why he's so frustrated because I don't see in Argentina playing a home game and being in there not having the fan support. I don't see that.
Jose and I have been at this in Aro Nunca many a time, and I tell him just because the U.S. isn't a U.S. men's national team country or an MLS country doesn't mean it's not a footballing nation. It's not a footballing country. You could see by the people who support the game in this country. You could see by the people who consume the game in this country. But when you have a U.S. men's national team who gives you very little to cheer for, and then you go out and trot the third team of that representation, it's going to be very, very difficult in today's financial climate. And I don't blame these fans. I don't blame these fans for not feeling represented by this U.S. men's national team, whether that hurts Mauricio Pochettino or not.
Do you think, Casey, when we talk about the World Cup next year, it'll be an issue? It's one thing at the Gold Cup, right? You're going up against Guatemala in a small stadium. It's the biggest game maybe in Guatemala's footballing history. You might say, okay, I understand why the U.S. played an effective away match at home. At the World Cup, do you worry that it might be the same, or do you think the World Cup's different and that the U.S. will have the home field that Mauricio Pochettino wants
the World Cup
when it matters most?
Will be different because the tickets will be allocated through U.S. Soccer. That will be the
But
difference.
they'll still at some point, Casey, hit the open market just like they did today. And if U.S. fans don't want the tickets bad enough, somebody else will come and pay top dollar.
For a World Cup, it won't be an issue at all. But I think one of the points that was touched upon is Guatemala right now have given their fans something to get excited about. And that was represented in the fans saying, look, we're going to go to this match because we think we actually have a chance of getting to our first final ever. The American fans are very disappointed with what they're seeing from U.S. Soccer and saying, you know what? I might spend that money on Club World Cup to go watch maybe a team that I don't see all the time. I think there's also an issue with oversaturation. I think both CONCACAF and U.S. Soccer choose the same stadiums over and over and over again, and the fans are like, yeah, I don't know if I'm putting my money for that match. Also, I don't know about this time. I know that it happened in the past. CONCACAF never advertises these matches in English. And so if you have a group that's excited about their team, they go get the tickets the minute they know that game's there. And you know how many times I was in a city playing in a Gold Cup and running into fans going, oh, wow, I didn't even know you guys were in here. I didn't even know you guys were in the city. Right. And so it's little things like that. Because I think where you have to really look at it is a World Cup qualifier against Guatemala in that same stadium will be exactly the opposite. It'll be 90-10.
Because it'll be controlled by
because
US
it'll be
soccer,
controlled
right?
by U.S. soccer and not CONCACAF.
Okay.
So those are little things. But don't get me wrong. It's always been one of the most frustrating things as a U.S. men's national team player is knowing that we could play 40 teams in the greater New York area and be the away team, knowing that we could play 20 teams in Texas, in California, and be the away team. And yeah, it's frustrating. And we always had a chip on our shoulder when that happened, no question about it. Now, I'm not going to take any of those excuses that Pochettino said because the first 20 minutes, the U.S. rolled them. It wasn't even, there was no fans getting, I mean, they just said, shut up, crush, here you go. The fact of the matter is that tactically the team stopped playing. Physically, the team stopped playing, and they retreated to hold on to what they had. And Jose, I'm sorry, but if they weren't playing the 106th ranked team, even though they're on an ascendancy, they lose this match by the way they played. They happened to win because they just happened to be better than the team they were playing against.
Yeah. Let's dive into some of the individual performances. I think we got to start with the. Go ahead, Herc. You got something?
Yeah, I want to ask you something. You're very well in depth with the U.S. women's national team. Why do they draw so well come tournament time? Why do the fans take to them so much? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think one, they're champions of the world. If we think about the Olympic tournament as the
because they win. Because they win.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the U.S. men's national team in the context of the Gold Cup, they have 7 titles. This is their 13th final. So it's not an issue about winning or losing.
Casey mentioned saturation. This tournament's played every 2 years. They just had another tournament, the Nations League, in March. They're disillusioned from what they're seeing or not seeing from this U.S. men's national team.
So why do Mexican fans keep showing up every 2 years?
That's Mexico. That is Mexico. For
It's
the
a
same
different
reason
culture,
that these
Jose.
Guatemalan fans that are American citizens show up because they're selling you nostalgia. And we had this discussion, and they're going to show out, and you cannot price them out. That is the exception to the bar of the Mexican national team. When you talk about world national teams, you got national teams around the world that can sell you out anywhere. Mexico is top 3. Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, they're going to be in the conversation every single time.
I'd also mention this just about this particular version of the U.S. The stars aren't there, and if you're selling it as a precursor to the World Cup, and we're supposed to get excited, like that's the one thing I find difficult about doing shows about this team.
Right.
What am I analyzing?
Right.
This team is not the team that's going to be playing next summer. So if you're selling it as, hey, we're 12 months from the World Cup, come watch the U.S. team, it's not even the same guys. So I think that's a big part of it.
I was almost analyzing more the Turkey and Swiss match because I said this is more likely of the competition
but
you're
even
going to
then,
play when it matters. No, but
it's still guys who probably
are not the guys.
But what I'm saying is the guys who could push themselves into that equation, and what we saw was what you expected with this group playing against stronger competition.